8A, doing Subunit 3, Narrative Writing, and we'll be doing Lesson 4, Moments in Time. This is an overview of today. Action scenes are often readers' favorite parts of a narrative, but they can be very difficult to write. One of the more challenging aspects of writing action is capturing the passage of time so that the readers experience it just as the characters do. Sometimes these scenes feel sped up, like they're flying by faster than we can process. Other times it's as if time grinds to a halt with every stretched out moment adding to the suspense. In this lesson, we will examine ways that writers slow down or speed up a narrative, and then we'll try these techniques in our own writing. So as usual, you guys are going to go to Activity 1. You're going to open your vocab app and you will work for 5 minutes. Once you are done, you can come back and click Next Activity. For Activity 2, we have 2 passages that we are going to read. Before we read, we are going to look at the questions. That way when we read, we know what we are looking for. So our first question, we are going to copy a moment from the passage where it feels like time is slowing down. We will then describe what the author does to slow down the passage of time. We will do the same thing for the second passage. Where is time slowing down, and what does the author do to slow down time? Then we will compare and contrast how the authors use words, sentence structures, or punctuation to slow down these moments. So our first passage is from The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon, and this is written by Stephen King. It was written in 1999. Halfway out, something moved under her. She looked down and saw a fat black snake slithering through the leaves. For a moment, every thought in her mind disappeared into a silent white explosion of revulsion and horror. Her skin turned to ice and her throat closed. She could not even think the single word snake, but only feel it. Coldly pulsing under her warm hand, Tricia shrieked and tried to bolt to her feet, forgetting that she wasn't yet in the clear. A stump of branch, thick as an amputated forearm, poked agonizingly into the small of her back. She went flat on her stomach again and wriggled out from under the tree as fast as she could, probably looking a bit like a snake herself. Our second passage is from Life of Pi by Jan Martel. It was written in 2002. Babu stepped up to the trapdoor between the cages and started pulling it open. In anticipation of satisfaction, Mahisha fell silent. I heard 2 things at that moment. Father saying, "Never forget this lesson," as he looked on grimly, and the bleating of the goat. It must have been bleating all along, only we couldn't hear it before. I could feel Mother's hand pressed against my pounding heart. The trapdoor resisted with sharp cries. Mahisha was beside himself. He looked as if he were about to burst through the bars. He seemed to hesitate between staying where he was, at the place where his prey was closest, but most certainly out of reach, and moving to the ground level, further away but where the trapdoor was located. He raised himself and started snarling again. The goat started to jump. It jumped to amazing heights. I had no idea a goat could jump so high. But the back of the cage was a high and smooth cement wall. With sudden ease, the trapdoor slid open. Silence fell again, except for bleating and the click-click of the goat's hooves against the floor. A streak of black and orange flowed from one cage to the next. So our first question, we want to copy a moment from the first passage written by Stephen King, where it feels like time is slowing down. And so I am going to highlight this sentence. Her skin turned to ice and her throat closed. I'm going to copy and paste it into my box. Then now I have to describe what the author does to slow down the passage of time. And so I am going to say that Stephen King, he is our author, slows down time by explaining what the character was going through. He stopped time to make sure we understood how she felt and what she might be thinking. This really slows down times, helps paint a picture for us, but it also focuses on this one moment, and he's talking a lot about this one moment. These are the details that when you're reading a book, you really enjoy and you want to read more of. So you guys are going to do the same thing for number 2. Copy a moment from the second passage where it feels like time is slowing down, and then describe what the author does to slow down the passage of time. Also, for question 1, I do not want you to use my answer. Come up with your own answer. There are a lot of different examples in this passage, and you can explain it in a variety of ways. I just don't want you copying word for word what I wrote. Then question 3, once you've come up with some examples for 1 and 2, you are going to compare what is the same and contrast what is different about how the authors use words, sentence structures, or punctuation to slow down the moment. And as a reference, I'm going to put up a picture for you guys. You can use this while you are thinking about your answers for this question. So some writing techniques that we can use for slowing down a moment. We can describe the physical environment in great detail. We can explain everything that is around us. We can also include the character's thoughts. What are they thinking at this moment in time? We can also show how the character feels. We are not going to tell how the character feels. We are going to show it. And then we can also include additional sensory details. What else does the character see? What does he or she hear, smell, touch, or taste? All of these help us to slow down a moment. So now you guys are going to take what you noticed in activity 2, and you guys are going to try to slow down a moment of your own. So you guys have 2 options for this writing prompt. You can either use the first prompt. I remember the first time I rode a roller coaster. It was terrifying. You can use one of the techniques that you noticed to rewrite this moment in a way that slows down the narrative to focus on details, feelings, etc. in this moment. Or you can choose a moment from your own life to write about. Use one of the techniques you noticed to slow down the narrative and zoom in on the moment. So you guys, again, do not have to do both of these. You choose one or the other. You either choose to write about the prompt that they gave you, or you can think about a moment in your own life. You guys should be writing for about 8 minutes. Make sure that you guys are writing more than just 2 sentences. You guys should be writing at least a fully developed paragraph. Once you are done with that, you can go ahead and click Hand In. So now we are going to talk about speeding up a narrative. We are going to read the 2 passages and answer the questions. You're going to copy a moment from the first passage where it feels like time is speeding up. Describe what the author does to speed up the passage of time. Then you guys will do the same thing for the second passage. Then we'll answer what words, sentence structures, or punctuation does the writer use to signal the transition to the moment speeding up? So our first passage is from The Princess Bride. It was written by William Goldman in 1973. The man in black retreated before the slashing of the great sword. He tried to sidestep, tried to parry, tried to somehow escape the doom that was now inevitable. But there was no way. He could block 50 thrusts. The 51st flicked through, and now his left arm was bleeding. He could thwart 30 ripostes, but not the 31st, and now his shoulder bled. The wounds were not yet grave, but they kept on coming as they dodged across the stones, and then the man in black found himself amidst the trees, and that was bad for him. So he all but fled before Inigo's onslaught, and then he was in the open again. But Inigo kept coming. Nothing could stop him, and then the man in black was back among the boulders, and that was even worse for him than the trees, and he shouted in frustration and practically ran to where there was open space again. Our second passage is from The Phantom Toll Booth by Norton Juster. This was written in 1961. You see, continued another in a more conciliatory tone, it's really quite strenuous doing nothing all day, so once a week we take a holiday and go nowhere, which was just where we were going when you came along. Would you care to join us? I might as well, thought Milo. That's where I seem to be going anyway. Tell me, he yawned, before he felt ready for a nap, now himself. Does everyone here do nothing? Everyone but the terrible watchdog, said two of them, shuddering in chorus. He is always sniffling around to see that nobody wastes time. A most unpleasant character. The watchdog, said Milo quizzically. The watchdog, shouted another, fainting from fright. For racing down the road, barking furiously and kicking up a great cloud of dust, was the very dog of whom they had been speaking. Run! Wake up! Run! Here he comes! The watchdog! Great shouts filled the air as the Lethargians scattered in all directions and soon disappeared entirely. Ruff! Exclaimed the watchdog as he dashed up to the car, loudly puffing and panting. So again, you guys are going to copy a moment from the first passage where it feels like time is speeding up. And so I am going to choose this one. But they kept on coming as they dodged across the stones. And I think that this moment is sped up because a lot happens in just this one sentence, but they kept on coming as they dodged across the stones. I imagine that this is an ongoing moment, but it's condensed into just one sentence. Then you guys cannot use my example. Come up with an example of your own. There are plenty to choose from and different ways to explain it. You guys are then going to do the same thing for the second passage. Copy a moment from the second passage where it feels like time is speeding up, and then describe what the author does to speed up the passage. You can then compare what words, sentence structures, or punctuation does the writer use to signal the transition to the moment speeding up. There's some pretty good examples of it in the second passage that I can think of off the top of my head, but obviously there are more than one. So once you're done with that, click Hand In, and you can move on to the next activity. Some things that we can use to speed up a moment. We can use vivid verbs. So we talked about that in one of our previous lessons. We can use multiple verbs in short phrases, one right after another. We can include multiple images, actions, or visual in short phrases, one right after the other. We can include multiple images, actions, or visual in short phrases, one right after the other. We can include multiple images, actions, or visual in short phrases, one right after the other. We can include multiple images, actions, or visual in short phrases, one right after the other. We can include multiple images, actions, or visual in short phrases, one right after the other. We can include multiple images, actions, or visual in short phrases, one right after the other. We can include multiple images, actions, or visual in short phrases, one right after the other. We can include multiple images, actions, or visual in short phrases, one right after the other. We can include multiple images, actions, or visual in short phrases, one right after the other. We can include multiple images, actions, or visual in short phrases, one right after the other. We can include multiple images, actions, or visual in short phrases, one right after the other. We can include multiple images, actions, or visual in short or we can use short, rapid-fire dialogue. You should be able to find examples of all of these in the two passages that we read. So now you guys are going to try this out. You can either choose number 1 or choose number 2. Number 1, they tell you, the light turned green. I smiled as the roller coaster shot down the track. You are going to continue describing this moment and speed up the narrative to convey a fast pace and intense emotions. Or you can choose to write about a moment from your own life, speeding up the narrative to convey the experience and the emotions you were feeling. You guys should be writing for about 8 minutes. And once you guys are done, I'll come back and click hand in. Now, I know that those of you at home do not have a classmate to share with, so you guys can skip A and B because you probably don't have a partner that has written something of their own. However, I still want you guys to get feedback on your own writing. So you are going to present one of these pieces. So if you click on 2, you'll get the one where you slowed down. And if you click on 3, you'll get the one where you sped up. And you're going to choose one of these two things. You can slow down or speed up, whichever one of your choice. And you're going to take it to another person. You can take it to a family member. You can take it to a sibling, a friend. And it doesn't necessarily have to be in person either. If you have like a long distance relative or something, you want grandma to read it, then you can definitely copy and paste it and send it in like an email or a message, whatever. And you will ask for feedback. However, it will be beneficial to the person giving feedback if you let them know what you are writing about. So if the goal of your writing was to slow down your narrative, you should tell that to the person who is reading your writing. Tell them, my goal was to make this moment feel really slow. How do you think I did? And when they do give you feedback, you can put it in this text box. And once you have gotten feedback, you can go on to number 7. And here you are going to revise your writing. So based on the feedback that you got from a friend, an adult, a family member, a neighbor, whoever, based on the feedback that you got, you are going to implement it in your writing. So if someone said, I think that you could add more vivid verbs in your writing, you're going to take that and you're going to add those into your writing at this moment. And then, once you're done, you're going to bold the parts of your writing that you revised in response to feedback from your partner. So it's okay that you add it directly into your writing, but it should be bolded. That way you can tell the difference of what was there before and what was there after. If for some reason you don't have someone that you can share with, you can send your work to me and I will look at it for you. You also have an exit ticket to do. You're going to read each quote and then decide if the writing slows down or speeds up the narrative. Then you're going to match the description of the writer's technique to explain how the writer slows down or speeds up. So you have these down here. However, you guys are going to have to read these carefully because 2 of them say the writer speeds up A and C say the writer speeds up, and B and D say the writer slows down. But you guys will have to also look at the technique that the writer uses. So you can't just say the writer slows down. You'll have to think, does the writer slow down the narrative by including a lot of descriptive sounds? Or does the writer slow down the narrative by describing a character's physical and emotional experiences? And these just drag and drop. If you put them in the wrong place, you can just drag the other one and replace it. You guys will go ahead and click hand in down at the bottom. You guys do not have to do the solo activity for this assignment. So you guys are done with your lesson for today. I hope that you guys have a good day.